Hi all, my name is Jenny and I'm back today to do another video. Today I'm going to be doing my booktube spin list number 2. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the booktube spin, this is put on by Rick McDonnell, who I'll put a link to down in the description box below, and it's basically an encouragement to the community to create a list of 20 books numbered 1 through 20, and then on the 30th or 31st of the month, Rick will spin a wheel and determine what number all of us are collectively reading. So I participated last month. I'll put a link to my booktube spin list from last month up in the cards above, and had a really fun time. I ended up reading Long White River by Liz Moore in March, which I will put a link to my March wrap up where you can hear my thoughts about this one as well, and ended up really enjoying it. And I don't think I probably would have read this anytime soon had it not been my booktube spin list pick, so I definitely wanted to participate again this next go round. So I have my 20 books picked out, and I thought I would just kind of share them with you, since I do have to make this list public technically to participate in the booktube spin. So I've broken my books into 4 different categories of 5 books each. The first of those categories are what I'm calling TBR leftovers, so they're books that I put on previous month's TBRs for 2021, and I have not yet gotten to them, but I do want to get to them. So I feel like this is a good opportunity to potentially be kind of forced to read any one of them in a more timely manner than perhaps I might otherwise. Starting with my pick number 1, we have A Kind of Freedom by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. I included this in my January TBR because I was working on a project at the very beginning of the year, but then I decided to scrap that project, and now I have less motivation to pick this one up. I read Sexton's sophomore novel, The Revisioners, which is actually like right back here, and I really enjoyed it, so I really want to pick this one up. Plus it's pretty short, and I am interested in the kind of topics that Margaret Wilkerson Sexton is exploring in her books. I believe this one is 3 timelines, one taking place during World War II, one taking place in the 1980s, and one taking place in the semi-present day, I think around Hurricane Katrina in 2005, so actually now like 15 years ago. And I believe it follows 3 family members as The Revisioners did. Then my number 2 pick is one from my March TBR, which is actually one of my Reading Women prompt books, which is Island Beneath the Sea by Isabel Allende. This is a historical literary fiction novel about a young enslaved woman living in, I believe, the 1700s, yes, the 1770s, and I believe it's just kind of following her life and challenges therein. I've heard good things about Isabel Allende, and so I'm excited to get to this one. So this is my number 2 pick. Then my number 3 pick is The Come Down by Rebecca Frumkin. This was one of my like pre-2020 picks, which if you've been kind of following along in my channel, every month I pick a few books from my bookshelves that have been sitting there since before 2020 or like the very beginning of 2020, and this was one of those picks that I wasn't able to get to in March when I picked it. So this is a contemporary / literary fiction novel about 2 families living in Cleveland, Ohio that I'm intrigued about. It also was written by someone who attended my alma mater, so I thought that would be a fun like reason to check this book out, but as you see I haven't gotten to it yet. Then pick number 4 is one from my April TBR, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it before the end of the month, and that's Sing and Buried Sing by Jesmyn Ward, which is another one of my Reading Women prompt books. This is about a young teenage boy and his half-sister who are traveling to pick up their white father, their mother is black, from prison as he's being released, and I believe there's some kind of speculative magical elements to this as well. I've heard really good things about Jesmyn Ward, so I'm excited to get to her. My final pick number 5 for this subset, is another April TBR pick, which is Triumph of the City by Edward Glaser. This is a nonfiction book about urban planning and urban economics, and I believe a kind of argument for the benefit of cities economically, but also in terms of health benefits and innovation and that type of thing. So this one is a bit on the older side, but is one that I've wanted to read for quite a while. Then moving into my next category, which are books that I'm super excited to get to, but don't necessarily otherwise have a reason to get to them. So I have 5 of those, and the first of those is Conjure Woman by Afia Atakora. This is one that I think I've talked about and put on like 5 TBRs because I'm really excited to get to it, but it just kind of keeps getting pushed back because other priorities have to take precedence. So I'm super eager to get to this one. It's a literary historical fiction novel about a young woman living just before the Civil War and then immediately after the Civil War, and I believe this one also includes some kind of speculative elements to it. I know that Lindsay from Lindsay's Book Life read this one around the time it came out last April in 2020 and really enjoyed it. Pick number 7 is a very recent acquisition that I'm also super eager to get to. It came out in March of 2021, and that's Red Island House by Andrea Lee, so a literary fiction novel about a couple. The wife is a black woman who's a professor, I believe, in the United States, or at least was at the time that they got together, and then her husband is an Italian man who's always dreamed of having a house in Madagascar, and so he actually builds this house and they live there for several decades, and I think it's just about their life together there and also the complicated feelings that the wife has about living in Madagascar, particularly in this very elegant, wealthy estate given the kind of history of colonialism there. So super intrigued about this one. Then pick number 8 is one of the books that I got for my birthday that I gifted myself, so I'll put a link to my birthday book haul up in the cards above as well, and that's Wandering in Strange Lands, A Daughter of the Great Migration Reclaims Her Roots by Morgan Jerkins. This is part memoir, part history of the Great Migration through Morgan Jerkins' family's history, as they were a family that moved to the north during the Great Migration in the early to mid 1900s. So I'm super excited about this one. I have heard good things about it, and also just feels like it will tick a lot of my boxes, but again is another one that I'm not sure otherwise when I'll be able to get to it. Pick number 9 similarly is one that I gifted myself for my birthday, which is Fuckface and Other Stories by Leah Hampton. This is a short story collection set in Appalachia. Leah Hampton, I believe, is from Appalachia. It doesn't say specifically, but it does say that she lives in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so I think she lives in Tennessee maybe, or North Carolina. I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I think she might live in the Asheville area of North Carolina. But anyway, this is a short story collection and all the stories are set in Appalachia. I believe a lot of them feature women and kind of, you know, issues of womanhood. The stories are about rurality, illicit sex, heartbreak, and honeybee collapse in the endangered and ever-changing hills of post-coal Appalachia. So another one that I'm super eager to get to. And then halfway through, pick number 10 is another one that I gifted myself for my birthday, which is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. This is a romance novel that really made the rounds on Romance BookTube back when it came out, I think last fall, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a contemporary romance that follows our main guy, who is an actor on a Game of Thrones like TV show, and our main female lead is a plus size woman who's a geologist, which I find very fun, who is also a member of the fandom of this TV show, and she writes fan fiction, and I believe also, no, the guy writes fan fiction. Yeah, the guy writes fan fiction, and she kind of does cosplay and kind of other elements of fandom culture, and the two of them know each other online but don't realize who they are in person, and I believe something happens where she's wearing her cosplay outfit and people are judging her because she's a plus size woman, and he agrees to date her, and then they fall in love. Sounds great. Super excited about it. I've not really heard any negative reviews about this, so definitely one I'm super eager to get to. Then this next subcategory is books that I'm titling Should They Stay or Should They Go, as these are books that I'm not sure I still want to read for whatever reason. Most of these books I've had on my TBR for over a year, and honestly I think my tastes have kind of just changed a bit, as none of these are really appealing to me that much anymore. So unless one of these gets picked, I honestly might end up just unhauling any of them unread, which I don't particularly like to do, but at the same time I'm not sure I really want to read any of these books. So on a side note, if you are watching this video and have read and enjoyed any of the 5 books I'm about to mention, do let me know down in the comment section below in case I should keep them around on my shelves, even if they don't end up being one of the ones picked. So the first of those is another one that also classifies as a TBR leftover, because I think I picked it in my February TBR and have not yet gotten to it, which is The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling. I remember this one making the rounds on BookTube a couple years ago in like literary fiction BookTube circles, and I remember hearing really positive things about it, which is why I think I picked it up. Although I do think I picked it up on like the clearance section of half price books, so it's not a huge amount of investment that went into this book, but it's a literary fiction novel about a couple, and the husband slash father of a young child is like stuck in Turkey. I believe he is Turkish, but he has a green card to live here in the United States, but because of some issue regarding deportation and immigration, he's unable to enter the United States, and I believe his wife slash the mother of his child is kind of having a breakdown because of that, and it just follows her over the course of a few days as she takes the child to a rural part of California, and the two of them just kind of have interactions with some other people. I've heard, as I said, pretty positive things about this one, but for whatever reason I'm just like not really that interested in this book anymore. So if you have read this and really enjoyed it, do let me know down in the comment section below. But otherwise, this is pick number 11 in case it gets picked. Then pick number 12, similarly, I think I also got on clearance or somewhere cheap at a used bookstore, and that's Luck in the Shadows by Lynn Flewelling. This is an older epic fantasy series that I know Chris from Chris's Bookish Cauldron loves, which I think is in part why I picked it up. But it's about 2 people, and I think one of them is a thief for the kingdom, and there's a lot of political intrigue, so I'm kind of intrigued about this one, but also it's kind of chunky, and I don't read a ton of fantasy anymore, at least at this point in my kind of reading life, and so I'm just not sure when I will get to this one. So here it is in this subcategory. And then pick number 13 is another one that I'm just not sure. I'm pretty sure I got it on clearance at Half Price Books again, and that's 10,000 States by Eleanor Henderson. I read and really enjoyed Eleanor Henderson's second novel, which is called The 12 Mile Strait, and this I believe is her debut novel, and it's about two people living in Vermont, and they are members of like a punk rock band, I think, and there's also some kind of discussion of the opioid crisis / drug addiction in here. So not really topics that I'm super interested in reading about, but I wanted to read this one because I really loved Eleanor Henderson's writing style in her second novel. So again, not really sure about this one. Then pick number 14 will be Therese Ann Fowler's A Good Neighborhood. This one, as you can see, I got as a book of the month pick, I think right before the pandemic started. So I think, yes, it's a March 2020 pick. And this one I was eager to get to prior to its publication. And then I heard a lot of mixed things about it after it was released. And so my interest in it decreased substantially. So this one is a contemporary fiction novel about two teenagers. One is white and one is black, and they live next door to one another, but I think the white female teenager's dad is a really racist, terrible person, and I think bad stuff happens between the two of them. I'm not entirely sure. I've heard mixed things about it. I know Therese Ann Fowler is a white author, and I think some of the critiques around this book were that it just felt very kind of white liberal-y, which I'm not quite sure I want to read. This is probably the most likely to go if it doesn't get picked, so make of that what you will. Finally, pick number 15 is kind of an outlier in this category. One, I don't think we'll get rid of it because it's a book that my mom really loves, so I assume that she'll want to keep it on her bookshelf. And two, I do think I really will enjoy this one, but for whatever reason, this is just not an author that I'm that like inclined towards picking up on a regular basis, and that's Amor Towles, and this one is Rules of Civility. I also have A Gentleman in Moscow on my bookshelf, and I do want to get to both of these books because I've heard nothing but amazing things about both Rules of Civility and A Gentleman in Moscow, but I feel like I just need some additional push to actually get me to read either of those books. So I'm putting this on this list in hopes that number 15 gets picked, which number 15 got picked last time, so who knows, maybe number 15 will get picked again. But this one is another literary historical fiction novel that takes place in the 1920s and follows a year in the life of our main character, whose name is Katie, as she kind of enters the upper echelons of New York society at this time, I think. And it's supposed to be really good. I know this is Olive from Book Olive's like absolute favorite book, and she rereads it every year in June. So if this gets picked, perhaps I will also read it in June in honor of Olive. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's amazing. I just, like, for whatever reason, have not been inclined to pick it up. And then for my last 5 books, I just randomly picked books using a random number generator off my TBR. And honestly, the 5 books that got picked are like pretty good picks. Like, I would be happy to read any of the 5 books. So the first of those is Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, which I have had on my shelves for like close to a year. I've always wanted to read more Toni Morrison, as I've only read Beloved previously, and I feel like Song of Solomon is another very popular one, so I've been eager to pick this one up at some point. And so when it was randomly picked for this spin list, I was excited about it. So this is book number 16. I don't really know what this is about, but since it's Toni Morrison, I am eager to read it regardless. Number 17 is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is Alyssa Cole's debut into kind of thriller horror genre, and follows a young woman living in Brooklyn as her neighborhood is slowly being gentrified. However, the gentrification may be even more sinister than like gentrification on a reality basis is. So I'm super excited about this one. Is it the best like May-June pick? Not entirely sure. Then pick number 18 was Even As We Breathe by Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle, I believe. And this is a literary mystery that's set during World War II and follows a member of the Cherokee Nation, which Clapsaddle is also a member of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation. And he is working in a hotel, and I believe a murder happens at the hotel, and he becomes a primary suspect. So I'm excited about this one. I am eager that it was picked because it was another one that I got myself for my birthday and just wasn't sure when I was going to be able to get to it. And then pick number 19 is The Lightest Object in the Universe by Kimi Issel. This one came out in 2019, I think, and I meant to read it a lot sooner than I did because I was super excited about this one. However, this book has a like pandemic dystopian sense to it. I believe it's about a pandemic that happens. And so because I didn't read it like immediately after I got it, which was like December 2019, it just like wasn't a good time. I tried reading it right at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, and it was talking about like the grocery stores being empty, and I was like, I can't deal with this. But I think now, especially that I'm fully vaccinated, officially as of today, I'm like in the clear in terms of my vaccination status, which is amazing. I feel like I'm kind of ready to dive back into pandemic dystopian books that used to be, prior to like living through a global pandemic, something that I enjoyed reading about in fiction. Now, like in the midst of a global pandemic, is that something I'm interested in reading? I'm not sure. But if number 19 gets picked, I will at least give this a try, because I was really intrigued about it prior to the pandemic happening. But this is a literary fiction novel about two people who are trying to kind of find each other again during the midst of this pandemic. I believe it's actually the aftermath kind of the pandemic, but millions of people have died, and so the whole world is kind of collapsed on itself, which, you know, is a frightening thing to think about. So I believe it's about these two people trying to reconnect as they're on either side of the United States. So excited about this one. I believe there's some trains involved because there's a train track on the cover. And then last but not least is pick number 20, which is Beautiful Revolutionary by Laura Elizabeth Willett. Willett is actually an Australian author, so I was potentially trying to fit this in for Aussie April, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So I'm glad that this is also another random pick, and this is yet another literary historical fiction novel, and this is a fictionalization of the Jonestown Massacre / the rise of the Jim Jones cult in the 1960s. I believe one of these people is a lover of Jim Jones. I think as Evelyn grows closer to Jones, her marriage is just the first casualty of his rise to power. So I'm not sure if maybe she was involved with him prior to him kind of starting this cult. Not entirely sure, but I am excited about this one. I feel like it will be really interesting. I remember hearing about this one originally from Jacqueline at 6 Minutes for Me, obviously the like Aussie April queen of BookTube, and I remember her speaking very highly about it, so I'm excited to get to this one. So this is pick number 20, and that brings us to the close of my BookTube spin list. Super excited to see which one of these 20 books gets picked on the 30th of April, because this month only has 30 days. I'm honestly pretty eager to read just about any of them, except for maybe those like Should They Stay or Should They Go books. But at the same time, like if I read the Should They Stay or Should They Go book, like I will have read it, which is part of my goal of either reading them or getting rid of them. So I feel like that will also accomplish a goal of mine. If you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. Additionally, if you've read any of these books or want to advocate through the like fates that be to the random number spinner that I pick any of these books, or you just think I should kind of prioritize them outside of the BookTube spin list, do let me know down in the comment section below. I hope you're having a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.